at night. I climb in bed, you're out like a light. I'm here, but I'm never home. And you're lonely, but not alone. Today, again, we're out on the ride. The longer we stay, the less we decide. The day is all your own when you're lonely, but not alone. Soon, though, the patterns around us will fade away. Soon, all the static will break into yesterday, or so we say. I toss.
Sorry, we're closed.
Even if it's me.
Dave? Yeah, especially if it's you. Come here, man, how have you been?
Not too bad.
So, when are we having a cold one?
I don't drink anymore, AD.
Oh, it sounds like there's a story there.
Yeah. Sorry I stayed away so long.
It is what it is.
We are going to stay a while in the cottage by the woods.
Have you ever stuck your head in a beehive? Have you ever seen the honey dance upon the
Excuse
comb?
me?
Ever hear the buzz in your skull? Well, you have now, you surely have now. Don't look so cross, dearie, you yearn, don't you see? It's only inevitable that you are here.
But not alone. Soon, though, the patterns around us will fade away. Soon,
What have you bought me, little one? Another lost one?
yesterday, or so we say. You miss New York, you have all along. I climb in bed, still singing your song. My words belie the tone. You're lonely, but not alone.
Hello and welcome to this year's documentary all about how I made Bee, a short about a bee's journey. Bee starts off very differently. It was originally a short called Connect that I felt like making. The story premise is that Dave, an accountant and divorcee, ex-alcoholic, is going camping with his kids in the woods. Unfortunately, his daughter Riley casts a spell to make them a family again that causes them to get stuck in a faith-themed time loop that resets the whole day if one of them dies, which they do a lot until they learn to work together. I soon had a script for the story, the most notable scene of which is probably the cabin one. It was a real shame I never got to make this scene, and I would like to share it with you now, to show the depth of Dave's character. The drunk in the pub continued spitting the words haggardly and with spite. Have you ever stuck your head in a beehive? Well, you have now, he cackled. You surely have now. Don't look so cross, dearie. You yearn, don't you see? It's only inevitable that you're here. Are you scared? Imogen shakes her head. Well, you fucking should be, he says, eyes glinting. That's what he said, the madman in the corner of the pub they stopped at. Some somber warning none could decipher. and before more was said, the barkeep kicked him out. Be gone with you, he said. You're scaring the tourists away. The drunk started to make his way out, still talking all the while. I'm not scared. Scary, you say? You've never met Samsara then. The moon's out. The old books say it's time. Don't be going in those woods if you can help it. Although I'm afraid it's already too late. He jeered. The barkeep gave him a hand in the direction of the door. Feck off, you old drunk, he said, disgusted. In retrospect, this was the first thing that was off. That's what Dave would come to realize. The kids were eating rather quietly. You could hear the cutlery scrape against the plates as they pottered about the kitchen. The cottage in the woods wasn't that bad. It almost looked warm. Almost. The colors were a bit grey. It could be nice if you heated it up a bit with the fire. It might be better. It's only for a few days, he thought, and it's the woods that we're here to see. But like a bell struck hollow, like a cello off-beat gong, the moment struck him. The moment he felt a familiar bottle at the back of the food shelf, glassy, heavy. Momentarily, the gong of downing it crossed his mind, like so many times before. It was a whiskey bottle. The last time he had one this special was with her. He could still see the glass clink, and there in her smile maybe it was hidden that she wasn't happy even back then. Back to reality. He picks up the bottle and slowly begins to open it. Kids were eating, they're not looking, he thinks to himself. His hands shake despite his best effort to stay clear-headed, and he can feel the clamminess on his forehead. Such a good bottle, he thought. Shame, thought as he topped it over, pouring it down the sink. It felt like the place was fucking with him. Why here? And that bottle? Why that fucking bottle? He thought. You see, the interesting thing that you don't immediately realize about the story is that when you talk to the old drunk in the pub, you're actually talking to the crow. And the crow is a character that comes into the story after the initial animation that I've made in the maze. Once Dave is in the wax maze, he encounters this crow again. And this crow is a shapeshifter, so he is also the man in the pub. And he came to give Dave a warning, but he was too late. Uh,
So, what kind of story is it actually? It's
Okay, so surprisingly, Samsa is not a horror or a bloodshed story, even though it might initially seem like quite a scary and psychologically thrilling setup. It's not. It's actually a fake. It has a nice, very happy ending where Dave manages to solve his trauma and get back to his family, and Samsa is seen as a kind of nice force that managed to help him do this. But initially, I present her as something quite scary because often things we encounter in life that can change us quite a bit seem very scary at first.
that's great. How hard was it to find the right shots in the production?
Okay, so finding the right shots. I spent a lot of time looking for shots. So I would just like I would with an actual set, like I did last year for my puppets. This year, I would zoom around the scene in the 3D space, trying to find good shots that would tell the story well all the time. And I think some of that time, I spent just looking for the good shit, whittling out the nice shots.
Good stuff, she
paid
meant.
off really well.
Okay. How was it to animate in Blender?
Animating in Blender was actually really comfortable to me because Blender was the first program I learned to animate in. It was not, however, comfortable animating a bee. because the bee is small, it is pernickety, it is hard to make a bee fly like it naturally flies, and yeah, this makes everything a bit more tricky. Also, the elaborate path the bee had to take through the scene in order to show it off. To the extent I wanted to show it off, meant that I had to do a few little tricks. I think one of my favorite shots is the spiral downturn shot that I managed to shoot of the bee uh, coming round the arm of a wax fluid pouring down to make the maze as it's being formed.
Luckily, I did have help generally. I did the writing and came up with the scenes, designed and made the assets, assembled the assets to make places, did the facial acting, animated the bodies, animated the bee navigating the honey spill scenes. We each did fluid simulations. I animated the metahumans in the scenes, except for the car scenes. Carl helped by shooting some of the planned scenes and rendering them. We each rendered quite a bit of animation footage, and between us could make B something worth buzzing about.
Project?
Yeah, Carl created a storyboard for the first iteration of our project. And in this, the two kids have their part. I gave him over my Unreal file with the models in so that he could easily pose them for his storyboard. I sourced the car as well. The bee animation was really tricky. And it wasn't because the bee itself was tricky, it was because it is such a small thing compared to the camera, and the camera has to often run on rails or on a rig or a path that it follows. Now, during the process of setting up paths and trying to build, like, I wanted to build this elaborate thing where the bee went along a rail and the camera then followed behind, staying within a certain range of motion while following the bee. And for the bee to stay in shot of the range of motion of the so I wanted to control the bee, I wanted to control the camera, I wanted to control the path they were on, and I also needed to control the empty, which determined which direction the bee was pointing in. So after playing with all these settings, I broke it. I broke it. It's broken. The camera I used was broken, and I didn't know what to do because the constraints didn't work as they should. It would glitch out ridiculously. Apparently, it's not a good idea to stack that many constraints on. Okay,
What
so
is the meaning behind the intro scene?
so for the intro scene, I wanted to embody the idea of becoming with the logo, which is kind of this concept and process philosophy that we are in a continual state of change. We are continually finding out who we are and changing at the same time. And I really like this concept. And it also kind of ties into what Dave has to do in the maze to get back to his family, is solve his past traumas. So B is about the continual process of finding yourself.
Oh, interesting. What is the meaning behind Samsa's speech?
Okay, so Samsa gives a really long, elaborate speech in the end, where she talks about a glass rolling around on the table, which it refers to a video I saw once, which tried to explain multiple dimensions to me, and I really like this concept of the glass rolling around on the table, casting these shadows that we look at but can't make sense of, because it consists, our whole world is this shadowy casted thing on the table, a bit like the shadows in the cave. So there is an additional meaning behind the speech of Samsara, and besides from finding a way to just be yourself within the world, within the constraints of your own mind and how it works, it's also because this is something that I wish for quite a dear friend of mine, who I had to break contact with after they fell prey to addiction. I really wish for them that they can sort out their lives and put everything back on track. And I guess Samsa is kind of my exploration of trying to do this for someone, because I can't do it for them.
He could feel the passage narrowing and contorting round him. It was damp and constricting and squeezing him almost into a different shape, like a thought struggling to be born. He pushed through the tacky wax combs of the hive. If this is the shape of a thought, then I can change them. Perhaps, says the crow, but only if you think them 1,000 times. Once will be enough to break free, but quickly the path will narrow if you forget to think it again. So the space with its horror and its beauty, it's all me. It's a way of seeing, yes. It's the vastness of the stories that you tell yourself, the ones that guide your thoughts. There are many yous, many stories. They don't all add up, you see. Like most people, you are a walking contradiction of narratives. So I am the obese honey eater trapped in the comb. Yes. And I am the small child that can charm all the bees by playing the scared boy that runs away and only wants to be safe. Yes. And I am all the bees. Yes, the bees are like thoughts that are still finishing themselves. It's only inevitable. How do I get out? I've told you before. You have to tell yourself a different story. Or don't do the story altogether. If it's all me, well, that's worrying. How can I be all this black goo, all this misery, all this echoing madness? You've never seen yourself from the inside out, said Samsara. Only letting you do that in her own way. You've never seen yourself from the inside out. Samsara is only letting you do that in her own way. You know, someone once told me all the things that we see are like a glass rolling around on a table. This reflection of this shadow where the light shines, it casts patterns. That's our reality, our plane of existence, and we look at these shadows and prisms of light shifting, rebounding, and we try to make sense of it, never knowing the shape of the glass that rolls around, never thinking all the little points of light or the recesses of darkness. It's just our shadows. You see, you go deep enough, and you don't just accept and love what you find as part of a point that make you up, but also that these points are ever shifting and changing like a vast expanding fractal maze. Then you begin to see that it's all you and what you tell yourself. Can you be all the things? Can you stop yourself from hiding and forget the boundaries of what's possible for you? Can you squeeze through the cracks like sifting sand, like a swarm of bees? Can you light up everything and realize it's all one thing? Can you take the many voices that shout all at once, and beyond them hear the heartbeat of the ones that speak them, and beyond that know that every beat is just another note in a song that ever shifts as you do? Your person is a song that never stops, that keeps changing, an ongoing orchestra that is, that becomes ever more. But for you, Dave, the song is stuck. Somewhere, someone told you shouldn't make music a certain way, that in fact you actually can't. And just like that, the potential of growth in the direction of the thought fades, like a passage in a cave you can't fit through. Yet you're the cave, because only you can keep the stories alive that form and restrict the passages. Can you for a moment, just a moment, imagine what's beyond the thoughts you stop yourself thinking? That sounds like a rather scary thing to do. Yes, bravery is needed now more than ever. Can you unloop the tangled string of your being? I think I can at least begin to imagine it. Try to imagine it with your whole body, your whole essence. If you can do that, you can escape the maze. Try to imagine it with your whole body, your whole essence. If you can do that, you can escape the maze. I will try. Dave sat silent for a while, and then with his eyes closed, you could see the little lights and the bees were lighting up in the dark, and the structures were untwisting. Everything was finding a source of natural order, and from darkness all the elements dissolved into bees. Everything gathered around Dave. Find your center, said Samsara. You see, in it all along. You just forgot you were more than a looping song. Nothing is ever wrong, but you can be out of place. And when you accept that, and when you gently try to find a fit for the thing lovingly, respectfully, you can find the natural order of your being. Somewhere, someone, something got itself twisted. And you forgot it's okay to be. Now push gently and find a sort of flow. Dave did. He pushed gently, fighting less against what he inevitably realized was only himself until he discovered edges, a sort of gentle boundary he could break if he wanted to. But instead, he gently held himself within it. And between him and this boundary, this first time, it's like Dave saw. Between him and this boundary for the first time, it's like Dave saw a flash of everything, a flash of nothing, so vast that it blurred out and transformed altogether, mending unmended and reshaped everything inside and began to make sense. And Dave cried. As he returned to himself, he realized that he was at the center of the maze. And when he undid himself, there was a whole world beyond it, reflecting back more than what fit his own narrative. He could skip a pebble or let it sink, and all of it was simply a part of a center that tapped into a sort of spark in the dark that ordered everything.